Hi, Ian. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, great to have you with us, mate. So tell us about where it all started for you in the Army.
Yeah, thanks, guys, for having me. I was one of those older school entry methods. I grew up in the bush, and I joined up via the Army Apprentice Scheme, where you could get in, and I joined up at the age of 15. So I was one of the youngest in there, and that was a 9-year contract straight up. It was interesting, come from back in the days, well before internet or anything, that sort of stuff. Your stuff was either on, I had 2 channels of TV, of which one only came on at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and would stop at 10. The other one was the ABC, so that'd come on at midday. That's how much I knew about the world. And then coming in, all these city people and things like that are joining up, and they knew so much more. So it was a really interesting time joining up at that stage, but went through there. It's a 9-year sign-up when you did the old apprentice scheme, so no matter what, they got you that 1 year before long service leave. So it always made you extend a bit more and extend a bit more. And it's interesting because I look back at the guys that I joined up with. We had an enlistment of 300 each year that went in, of which only about 250 finished the apprenticeship scheme. Of those, there's still about half a dozen that are still serving. Of a select group joining, that's incredible. You've got people who are now doing 40 plus years. I mean, I did 33 and was burnt out and gone. But incredible devotion, a lot of those through that apprenticeship scheme. So that was really interesting. But it was during a period of time, and I think you'd call it the Great Peace. Post-Vietnam, so all my supervisors and all that were post-Vietnam, all very disjointed, all very militant, angry people. PTSD wasn't a thought, but you could see it right in front of you. It was a pretty rough time because everybody was trying to be as tough or as skilled or experienced as those guys who had the ribbons on their chest, because nobody was going anywhere at that time. In fact, the budget was for defence was pretty poorly. So I still remember doing my sub-2 for corporal, I think it was, in the mid to late 80s, because even the Arms Corps guys didn't have enough ammunition to go blank rounds and then go onto the range to keep up their skills. We were running through the bush yelling, bang, bang. Now you've got grown men, with rifles and things like that, and we're having to run through the bush going bang, bang. But it was a really weird area because, I went from the apprentice school and I went to Puckapunyal, and I was 17, didn't have my driver's license at that stage, but I was driving tanks. So there it was that, before I could get my driver's license, I'm driving MI13s, I'm driving around in Leopard tanks, I'm firing machine guns and rocket launchers and all this sort of stuff. And the few trips I got to go home, the understanding of what people I went to school with and things like that, they were just learning to do their first job or something like that. And what their experiences were and the people they were dealing with, they couldn't comprehend that a 17-year-old is running around with, the M60 machine guns and all this sort of stuff, tanks, and they're just going, their ability to understand and me to be able to talk to them about what I used to do or what I was doing grew further and further apart the longer I served. So the linkages back to home sort of vaporised over a period of years, to the point I've only really got a few school friends now. I keep in touch with, thanks to social media, with a few of them, but we really haven't, they've got no idea about what I've been through. So that's the only fallback really, is your military mates or the people who have been absolutely around you for that period of time.
Yep.
So, if you have a look at it, I did I think it was 14 postings, I think, mainly with arms corps, engineers, cavalry, artillery. I spent 9 years supporting artillery, so that's why I yell a lot. Went away, a couple of tours, 2006 and 2007 to Iraq, then went to East Timor, did an out-of-corps role there. That was really interesting there. I was living within the villages and going out and basically trying to understand how well the country was going from the grassroots level, rather than just sitting inside an office in Dili and going, check that out. So I spent most of my time there. Ended up, at the end of 33 years, getting out, running one of the bigger workshops in Army. And at that stage, I was with an engineer regiment, and we had people, I think, in about 5 different parts of the globe all at once on various deployments. We're still doing ACAP in Central Australia. We had people in 2 different locations in the Middle East. We were doing Nauru at that time. We had somebody over there, I think. We were looking at doing some intergovernmental work with, I think it was Uganda or somewhere, a Commonwealth country in Africa. So everything was all over the place, and I was still demanding, You do the work as if everybody's back on deck. That was also moving. Part of the unit was down in Sydney, part of the unit was up in Amberley, part of the unit was at Enoggera. It just burnt you out. So at the end of 33 years, I thought I was just done. Copped some hits physically while in Army, and when got to that stage where you're just looking at the next 5 years and going, geez, I don't know if I can keep doing this. Physically I'm burnt. I don't know if it was wise or not. It was probably all that testosterone still running around in your head, making poor decisions, as most of the time it does. I elected to take discharge, but I took discharge under normal pathways. And if you look back on it, what I found since is that was the most stupid decision I ever did, because I should have got out medically. I knew I'd broken my back. Army knew that early on in my career. I had an accident and damaged a vertebrae, but I knew I had other serious injuries there, and Army Medical at the time really didn't investigate it too much further. Their focus, as further on in my career went, the more deployment momentum was going, they wanted you back on deck straight away. So the least they knew, the quicker they could put you back in. And so only on discharge when I got out and things weren't going well, and this leads me to a funny story there that showed me that I wasn't really firing on all cylinders when I got out. I knew I had to go and see a doctor. I knew nothing about the medical system. You've got to remember, I joined up before Medicare cards occurred, right? Just before Medicare cards came out. And you weren't given one in Army until I think the 90s, I think it was, because you were forced to only go to military medical officers, only go to their designated specialists, and they owned you. Medically, they owned you. And so I get out, and I knew I had to see a doctor, so I go down to my local clinic, sort of had a grey grasp of what was required. So I had my credit card, I had my Medicare card, and I had my Defence Health card, because everybody joins Defence Health, don't they? And I rock up there, and there's this young flippity-gibbet young girl there. And I said, look, I really don't know what I'm doing. Here's my Medicare card and things like that. I need to see a doctor. And she had, the look on her face was absolute amusement. She giggled and openly said, what you don't know what you're doing. Where have you been? This is funny, and this sort of stuff. And I'd only got out, and this sort of triggered me. I didn't realise what was going on in the upstairs department at that stage. But, those office chairs, they've got the rolly wheels on it.
Yep.
I was old school. If you had a grumble with somebody, if you're going to do something like that, where's the respect? I'm going to come over here, I'm going to plant one on you, and then we'll talk about it later when I mop the bleeding up. And so I've leapt over and I was about to punch her. And there was another, let's say, more mature nurse behind the counter at that stage, and she just pushed this girl in this chair, just slapped her right on the side of the chair, and then went whip, round down the side there, and she goes, oh, you just get out, love, did you? And I said, yes, wanting to know how this psychic nurse knew I'd just got out of the military. She goes, oh, you need this one, and you need to do this. We'll just write your details down. And she got me into a quiet area in the waiting room, and the very first doctor straight in, so I could get sorted there. Later found out that she was the wife of an ex, so she knew what was in front of her. But that let me understand that probably things in the upstairs department weren't going as well. Following on getting the medical help through the actual specialists there that had control of it, they found out I went from 1 damaged vertebrae to 9. I only got 50% contact in a shoulder. Both knees are dead. I had some serious knee damages. I had my kneecap go sliding up into my groin at one stage and nothing. My lower leg hanging on. But that was all rebuilt, but it was actually understanding what that damage was. Should have done medical discharge, Retrospectively, was still working there, but gold card wasn't hard to get when you got 9 smashed vertebrae and things like that. So I'm not upset by separating. It was the issues of the separation that I had to then go and deal with. The beauty of it is, in my aspect, is I was running Ramus at the time, and I'll talk to Ramus a bit later, but I've got a very, very smart wife, believe it or not. She's an ex-rocket scientist. She pushed me out on a property. We had a rocky cliff that overlooked the river. We called it the Rock of Contemplation, and I had to sit there and I had to work out. She goes, work out who you are, because you can no longer tell people what to do. You're no longer in uniform. And if you took away all the military applied things, the disciplines and the demands and things like that, I really struggled. I had issues understanding who I was, where I fit into the civil world, what the civil world thought of me. I'd given my all. These bastards should bloody recognise me. These bastards should at least, understand the fact that I can get a little grumpy at times, and I may say I want to cut your throat open, but I won't actually do it.
Yep.
All right? But apparently you can't do that, and as I've found out. So I started a lot of contemplation, working out where I was and things like that. And it was really going through, I had connections with a couple of mates who had got out, and I made mention of little incidents that I may have done at the doctors, and they said, you need to come have a chat. And I hooked up, and it was actually those guys that had gone before me that had shred the boards a bit that we started to chat about it. We found out, I know a guy like this. And one of the surprising ones was an ex-Special Forces mate of mine. He said, oh, no, I'd been seeing a psych for a while. And I thought, oh, geez, that's because of, the hyper level of what he's been through. And we actually sat down and said, actually, no, the stresses were very similar. I hadn't been talking to anybody, and I hadn't really worked out or investigated this mental health thing that was going around. We all had the awareness of PTSD, but I didn't think I had the indicators. So I went off and got saw a psych, and lo and behold, there you go. Part of my desire not to sit on my hands was to go out there and learn more and do a lot more research, and that, with the support of my mates, sort of turned me around a bit there. And in fact, turned me around a lot, because I actually was using Ramus Rover as not only to help others, but also to help me as well, because it forced me to get smarter, get better, and be truthful, be raw about it, about what it is.
Yeah, definitely. So, and the Ramus Rover program, tell us about that.
Years ago, I said I was, when I said I was at Puckapunyal, right? There was a trade training activity where you'd get electricians to do welding, or you'd get mechanics to do wiring and things like that, and that was Ramus Rover. This was a Series 2A Land Rover that was acquired out of war stocks, and the Puckapunyal Workshop Company owned it. It was used to cross-train but also participate in what was known as the BAV, which is the Buggy Association of Victoria, which is now CAMS or Motorsport Australia or whatever you want to call it. And they'd go out there, and back in the days before internet and things like that, Puckapunyal was a bit of a dense military area, and they got into trouble in the bars. So one of the things was they used to go and watch the army car crash because it was shit. But it was something that everybody got behind, and it was done there. After the restructure of Army, most of the regular forces moved out of Puckapunyal. It became solely training, and that was put into storage at Bandiana, and it stayed there. And it was a really good car at the time. I mean, there was a guy that had take it back, an LJ Tirana XU1 with Bathurst spec in it. He was an 18-year-old apprentice. His dad had lent him the money to go and get it. Had a 186 Holden engine in there with triple SUs, Munchie 4-speed gearbox. It was everything. And he wrapped it around a tree on the Yea Road. I think about 3 months after he got it, his dad said, get rid of it, or I'll get rid of it. So he donated the engine and transmission. So that was sitting in Ramus. So this thing could get around. Had the suspension travel of a gnat, but could go fast on the flat. So anyway, we go forward, and when I was in my last posting there at 6th Engineer Support Regiment, we were under stress. I told you we had people all over the place, right around the world, and we had a presence in Afghanistan for, at that stage, by 11 years straight. We just cycled people through, and they were the IED exploiters, right? They were out there, the EOD guys were out there, and they just re-roll the engineers through 20 EOD squadron, and they just continually go. So we had some really serious mental health issues coming through, and you could see it. You look at their eyes, and, there was like piss holes in the snow. There was nothing in the background. These guys were burnt, and that started to give issues. So my guys asked for this car, and I said, well, all right, I'll phone up head of corps, who sort of owned it, sort of didn't. And he said, please take it on one condition. It has to go back to the track. All right. So we took it, and at the same time when we got it, I was in the CO's office there, Matt Galton. Call came through, and Curtis McGrath had been tapped and lost both his legs. And I went, oh, Jesus. So fast forward, when we finally got the car running now, when we got it, all the good bits had been ratted out of it. There was just stuff there, but we got a car. And it was distracting for the guys. It gave them things. They'd stay after work, or they'd come in on weekends just to clear their head and just chat about things in a non-military sort of environment. By the time we got that car going, Curtis had just come back, and he had, I think it was his 4th or 5th operation on his stumps. And he hated crutches, but he had no choice. He hadn't really met his mates since, because he'd been to hospital in Germany and surgery here. And so we looked around, and quite honestly, we had nothing in the yard. All the vehicles have been deployed somewhere or allocated to something, and we had stuff. The only stuff we had around there were the broken things my workshop was fixing, and then they'd leave straight away. So I said, do you want to go see your mates? Because believe it or not, they'd just come back from another tour, and they had to still do their basic IET assessment before they go on. So you've got guys who'd just gone out there shooting, and now they're made to go through the bush with blanks going bang, bang again. Oh, that rings bells. So I go, do you want to see your mates? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, do you want to go on a race car? Oh, should you? So I'd bring the race car around. I said, "Do you want help in?" He said, "No, fuck off, sir." And I went, "Oh, you lost your legs. I'll give you that one. That's fair." All right. So we get in there and we go out, and everybody knows the RAF base at Amberley. There's a Hanson's Farm, which is out the side, which is a safety zone which the Army uses just for basic IMT, so they don't have to go to another range. It's one cattle gate open, one cattle gate closed, that's it. So we went out there, and there's these guys who are underneath the flight path, patrolling along the bush, trying to just do their basics so they can then go home. And this stupid, brightly coloured Land Rover's bouncing and making all this noise, trucking along. And they're looking at it, going, "What the hell is that?" And Curtis sticks his head out and says, "G'day." And that was the first time they saw him. But it was the relief and the turn from that. Curtis put us on to the Soldier Recovery Centre, and I knew the guy running a program. We got some guys from 6th Battalion who came out just to do some hot laps. The guys from 21 Construction made a little test track in our training area for us, and we got some guys from 6th Battalion, as I said. We did just a hot lap program there, just as, because although at that stage we didn't know how to manage the huge amount of injuries we were getting. And so we just made them hold hands, sing Kumbaya, do knitting. So how do you feel about that? And it really wasn't blokey. You're talking about the blokiest blokes going out there shooting, and now we want to get them to do knitting. I didn't see the lining up at that. So we brought them out, gave them a little bit of fun with that. We haven't had a guy that had a metal plate in his head because he got shot in the head and things like that. So there were some pretty serious injuries that these guys are coming across. They went back, and a mate of mine who was running the physical rehab side of the program phoned me up and said, "What did you do?" And I went, "Oh, God, my career's gone. What's happened now?" And he said, "They haven't shut up since they've come back. This is awesome. I think I know what Ramus is going to do now. It's not going to do a trade training thing. We're going to help our mates." So I did a little bit more research, and thankfully my wife's uncle is a retired general in the UK Army. He made a phone call through to Race to Recovery over in the UK. They focused on limbless and physical impairment, where we do more mental health and transition support with our program, and we do now. He lined up that I could get in contact with him. We started that. I then spent a day and a half, travelled over the UK, did a day and a half, and they gave me the whole program, everything. They said, "Go forward and do it." Changed it to be Australian because we don't need snow survival in Australia, and other key things. Our motorsport doesn't run those sorts of cars. We run these sorts of cars, and we had Ramus. And the reason why I did put Ramus back into off-road racing is because it's back in the bush where people feel more comfortable. You're away from the distractions. It's back in the green, and most people like camping. Even the Raffies at times don't mind camping, as long as there's ablutions and some with TV. But so the environment was right. So I did that, brought it back, and got stuck into researching what this is, and found a few high-level research documents both from the UK and the US, made linkages with guys in the US as well, and then we really started to get on to refining the program. And what that focuses on is showing those people, despite what injuries they have and what background they have and what mental health issues they have, you can still do extreme, interesting, challenging activities just like every other Joe out there in the civil world. Plus, we'll show you and engage you with a group of people who support what you're doing and go out of their way. We have an amazing reputation and an amazing relationship with off-road racing. It really is humbling.
And you say with any condition, all these injuries, how do they get in a race car bouncing around without impacting on their injuries?
Yeah, don't get in Ramus. No, Ramus is being rebuilt at the moment, so heavily rebuilt, and we finally got permission through all the racing authorities with the new design, because we've had to go outside to standard roll cage designs. If your knee doesn't lift so high, your arm doesn't work, how are you going to get out of the car? We give no spade. As far as if the regulations say you have to get out of a car in 15 seconds, you have to get out of a car in 15 seconds. Whether you have one arm, no arms, no legs, it doesn't matter. And we train you to do that. We also now are building a modified car. On top of that, we have about 4 other cars, and they have extreme suspension travel, and they are purposely built and designed for off-road racing. And the thing is that it looks dangerous. It is fast, let's be honest. We're doing 180, 200 k's an hour along a track that a farmer would check his fence lines, and there's a barbed wire fence 1 metre one side, thick scrub the other. We are still belting on there, and we'll jump the car, 50 metres distance. We'll do that. But we will train and train and train to ensure that the person who gets in the car is well looked after. We've never injured anyone, and that's a tick in the box because we basically used the military skills that we had. That's all we're doing. We have a lot of skills in us that we bring to off-road racing, the off-road racing community to go, oh, Ramus is here. All right, pressure's off. If there's an issue or something, these guys probably have an answer or a skill that they've used before and we can rely on it. Consequently, if we have a breakage or anything like that, they'll give parts off their car to us. Generally, if you don't turn up on time at the start line within a certain time before you don't start that heat, you're a DNS, did not start. They will slide us to ensure we run. We've had people in there having psych moments in there, they're having anxiety attacks, and we'll go through our processes to calm them down. And they just simply come up. We have a code that we say over the radio so nobody else knows what's going on. Our staff will go up there and they'll just simply slot us back. And we could talk them down and we go off and do it. They don't let that for anybody else.
Incredible, Ian. How do people get involved in the program?
Check out on the socials. If you want to know our day-to-day stuff, what we're doing, our Facebook page, Ramus Rover Racing, is out there. The website, which is Ramus Rover, R-A-E-M-U-S, Rover, R-O-V-E-R, ramusrover.com.au. We'll give you a broad overview of what's going on that year and so forth. But every week down south, we have a workshop. We have our own workshop sitting down in Yamanto near Ipswich. We have our own racetrack right behind the V8 supercar track there at Willowbank. That's private to us. The council there is fantastic. They have given us open access to that and nobody else can be there. We also run a fortnightly. I've just started up because I've now come up to North Queensland, so I live just out of Ayr, so I have a fully professional workshop sitting out there on the property, and we run every fortnight. We have a workshop there, just a few guys and girls turning up and getting involved because I've got my race car up here as well. Plenty of opportunities because we run in the Queensland Championship, and then we also get involved with some big races where we have the actual racetrack to ourselves for half a day or a day prior to the event, so that gives us the opportunity to get people in 800 horsepower race cars or, trophy trucks and things like that.
I was going to say, how much are they worth, the vehicles?
Yeah, so we had Finn from here come down, so I put Finn into a trophy truck. That's a cool $500,000 rolling around there. That's punching out about 790 horsepower at the wheels, and I think he did about 160 across the top, then jumped the car about 4 metres in the air and landed on a cloud.
Nice.
And he's now hooked like a drug. Some of the other cars there, we have it's not unusual for some of the cars, the more modern cars that are coming out. And if I ever get the opportunity to get them, which is not unusual, that's $1 million rolling down the road there. They're more expensive than a V8 supercar, more horsepower than a V8 supercar, and will give you more G-forces than a V8 supercar.
What an incredible program, Ian. So we're asking all our guests this question. What would you tell your younger self?
Yeah, no, I think we spoke about those sorts of things earlier, and I think the best thing I could say is you're better than you think you are. I was a young fella joining up, and as I said, I came out of the bush, didn't know a great deal. Joined up as any impressionable teenager in there, surrounded by all these city smart people and doing this sort of stuff, and knew a lot more about the things. You doubted yourself, and the early years were quite tough. But I have to say, I knew I had skills that were valuable. It just that at that time in the early years, I couldn't display it. As service went on and as I matured, I found out they were highly desirable, and I was a lot better than most. And I didn't have to try that hard in the things that I knew well. I just had to try hard in the things I didn't know well. It actually turned out that, yeah, you are a lot better than you think. When you're going new into an area, be it signing up or discharging, have faith. You are a lot better than you think you are.
Awesome, mate. Thanks very much for sharing your story with us today.
No, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Ian.